You are listening to the PensNation radio show on thepensnation.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepensnation.
Hey, new intro music. You are listening to the PensNation radio show. I'm Zach De La Roca, joined by co-host Tom Morello, and also with Josh Yohe. And Josh, if you had to pick, who would you be in this all-star cast of rock and rollers?
Why do you have to start me with such difficult questions?
Yeah, well, we don't throw softballs around here.
No, you don't. I like that. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you.
Josh, I guess let's fire away right away here. And we were just talking off air about how this is actually a much more kind of compelling training camp storyline because, thinking back to the past couple of years, it may have been 18 of 20 roster spots that were virtually guaranteed and we knew everything about going into camp. This season, not so much. And even more than that, we don't know what the criteria for these guys are. We knew what Dan Bowsman and Ray Shearer were looking for. We have really no idea what Mike Johnston's looking for and what Jim Rutherford are going to be going for. How do you approach covering a camp like that? And are you looking more towards the players or what the coaches and management are doing as you're approaching your coverage of the game?
Well, all of the above, really. I'm looking forward to this camp more than any training camp that I have covered. You said it. You've got a new coach, a new coaching staff, and new management. So that alone makes things different. And you've got a pretty significant roster overhaul that took place this summer as well. So you've got a lot of new bodies in place. There's a lot of storylines going into camp here. And you're right. In past years, you could say last year, the year before, Craig Adams is going to make the team because Dan Bowsman loves Craig Adams and Ray Shearer loves Craig Adams. Now you look at the team and say, well, what if Jason Megna has a better camp than Craig Adams? Does that mean Craig Adams maybe doesn't play? And that's something you never would have questioned in the past, but now I think you wonder about stuff like that. So, there's a new feel to this team, a feeling of, not really being sure what to expect. Last few seasons, we knew the Penguins were probably going to win their division and have a great regular season, and we knew it didn't really matter until April. Now, I don't know. I still think they could be an elite team, but no, there's a lot of questions, and I think it's going to be a really interesting camp for those reasons.
Now, you say you think that this team could still be an elite team, and I think a lot of Penguins fans and people across the league feel that way. Anytime you have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin in your lineup, you have a pretty good shot at being among the Cup contenders anytime, or at least being mentioned in the same breath of Cup contenders. But what's your real gut feeling about this? Would you be surprised if this team was making a run at things in the spring?
Well, as currently constructed, I don't view them as a Stanley Cup contender. People can talk about their, bottom six being better now than it was at the end of the season. Well, yeah, maybe it is, but the bottom six was so bad last season that I still don't know that it's good enough to be, a legitimate Stanley Cup winning bottom six at this point. And Crosby and Malkin, and Crosby in particular, he needs to play better in the playoffs because his last couple of postseasons haven't been good. And he and Malkin need to find that playoff dominance that really we haven't seen from them in many years now. And the blue line, for all that it is exceptionally talented, offensive defensemen galore. They're going to score a lot of goals, but do those kind of defensemen win in the postseason? I think that's a real question. So as the lineup is currently constructed, I still think it's a really good regular season team. I don't think it's a particularly good playoff team, but I will tell you guys this. I had a conversation with Jim Rutherford a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him if, especially now that he's in Pittsburgh and he can spend as much money as the cap will allow, I asked him, just how aggressive will you be during the season and in particular at the trade deadline? And without hesitation, he looked at me and he said, I will be very aggressive. So that told me that this team is going to look a lot different in March than it looks right now.
Talking about the bottom six, and I don't think, you mentioned there's not a whole lot to compare it to as far as last season, and there doesn't take much to be better than that. One quote that kind of came out of Toronto today, because he was up on the radio up in Canada with the rookie and prospects tournament going on up there, was from Tom Fitzgerald, and this is kind of paraphrasing someone else transcribing his interview, but he mentioned Craig Adams by name in speaking so much to the way it's quoted is, "If you can take Craig Adams' job, we will give it to you." Specifically mentioning Craig Adams by name there. Is there a feel? I mean, I know the coaching staff hasn't really gotten a chance to get in there and be hands-on with the team, but have you been able to get any kind of body language or anything from the management and coaching staff in the short time that we've been kind of back in action around Consol Energy Center?
Well, if there was ever one criticism of Shiro and Bilesma that was almost universal, it was that they were not willing to let young players have bigger roles, or in some cases, any roles. And I feel pretty strongly that this won't be the case with this new regime. And in particular, you mentioned Tom Fitzgerald. You know, Tom Fitzgerald and Billy Guerin are two of the guys who have been developing these young players for the last couple of years in the organization. And I think those two guys in particular have always been a lot bigger on, say, a Simone Dupre than maybe Dan Bilesman and Todd Reardon were. And that's not going to change. Those guys are still in the organization. They still think really highly of so many young guys on this team. And Johnston and Rutherford, the more I talk with them, the more I get the feeling that while they don't think this team needs a complete youth movement, they don't think it's a rebuilding team, they're willing to give young guys a shot. They really are. And, you know, does that mean, you know, Craig Adams is going to get cut or released in a couple of weeks? No, probably not. But it is interesting that his name came up. You know, if we want to talk specifically about Adams, he gives the Penguins next to nothing 5-on-5. His penalty killing slipped, I thought, in the second half last year. I think he's 37 now. Is he one of their best 12 forwards? You could make an argument that he isn't. I think he's a leader and a respected guy in that room, and there's something to be said for that. And he still does, you know, play a pretty good defensive game. So I think that Jason Magna or somebody of his ilk is maybe a better player than Adam right now. Yeah, I think the argument can be made, and it's going to be awfully interesting to see who the top 12 coming out of training camp are. And, you know, throw Daniel Carcillo into the mix, too, for that matter. You know, they picked him up for a reason. It's only a tryout contract, but they obviously want to get tougher. Perhaps he can add that. So, no, it's a pretty interesting collection of forwards they have right now.
You know, we talked a little bit about Craig Adams because that was the quoted thing, but do you think this kind of also applies to a guy like Rob Scuderi on defense too?
It might. You know, Scuderi makes a heck of a lot more money than Craig Adams and has 3 years left on his deal. Really interesting, though. I was actually thinking about it today. I had a chance to talk with Simone Dupre for a minute, and let's assume Ole Mata is healthy for opening night. I actually think he might be. The top four, I think, is absolutely clear. It's Letang and Martin, Ehrhoff, and Mata. Those are clearly your four best defensemen. Those guys are going to play big minutes when they're healthy. So that leaves two spots. And that leaves you Rob Scuderi, NHL contract, Robert Bortuzzo, NHL contract, and Simone Dupre, NHL contract. So that tells me those are probably your seven defensemen going into the season. And who sits? That's my question. And I hope it's not Simone Dupre, because I just don't see the point in giving this guy a new contract and then just sitting him and not seeing what he can do. I really want to see this guy play. He probably played the best hockey of his life in Wilkes-Barre during the playoffs and late in the regular season down there. And I don't think he's been so bad at the NHL level, quite frankly. I want to see what he can do. And it's going to get even more interesting, by the way, as we get into the season when Derek Pouliot gets healthy. I asked Mike Johnson a couple of weeks ago if Pouliot's ready to play in the NHL right now, and his response was absolutely. And he wants him to play a little bit in Wilkes-Barre, but he wants him to come up at some point this season. So that's going to be an awfully crowded blue line. And could Scuderi be the odd man out? Yeah, he could. But that's a lot of money to be, sitting in the press box. And to hear Scuderi talk, he's convinced that he's going to have a better season. He knows he had a bad year, and he certainly suggested that the ankle injury he suffered in October was kind of in his head the rest of the season. And, I think he deserves a chance to see how he'll perform. But between him and frankly, Bortuzzo, too, if you take Bortuzzo out of the lineup, guys, there's absolutely no muscle on that blue line at all.
Yeah.
Because you look at that top four, Letang, Martin, Mata, Ehrhoff, that's a lot of talent. But who's going to move anyone out from in front of the net on the PK in that top four? No one. Absolutely no one. Where's the muscle? There isn't much. Bortuzzo is the one guy that can give you that element. So, no, it's going to be really interesting to me to see who gets the 5 and 6 jobs.
You mentioned a little bit about Olli Mata there, looking like he's going to be ready by opening night. Derek Pouliot's kind of in that same situation right now. Both guys had shoulder surgery over the offseason. What's his timetable looking like right now?
Yeah, Pouliot is about 2 or 3 weeks behind Mata's pace, which is kind of ironic because he's always been a little bit behind Mata just in terms of development in general. always ahead of the curve in that regard, it seems.
Yeah.
I've seen, they're both in Pittsburgh now. In fact, they've been here for a couple of weeks. I've watched Olli skate the last couple of weeks in these little informal workouts and scrimmages they're having, and you would never know that there was something wrong with him. He really looks great handling the puck and skating. I mean, just looks fabulous. And in fact, in the next day or two, he's going to get official word from the doctors if he's allowed to absorb contact in practices. And if he is, in the next week or so, he should be ready for the start of the season. He looks great. Pouliot will not be able to take contact during training camp. Mike Johnson said he might be able to participate in some drills, but he'll clearly be behind. And I wouldn't expect him to be ready for game action probably until November at some point, if I had to guess. Just a guess. He could be before then, but they're going to be careful with him, and he'll report to Wilkes-Barre when he's ready, and that's probably the best thing for him. Given the depth on the Penguins' blue line, they don't need Pouliot right away, but like I said, Mike Johnson really, really loves this guy, so you're going to see him in Pittsburgh before too long.
So some updates on the progress of Olli Mata and Derek Pouliot as far as their injuries go coming into training camp. Another Penguin that everyone's interested in learning about, and his rehabilitation is Pascal Dupuis. We haven't seen him since his knee injury last December, and lots of people are wondering. We see him skating. He's not clear for contact yet, but about how far off is Pascal Dupuis?
He's fine. I think he'll be cleared for contact any day now, in fact. He has said all along that he will be ready for October 9th against Anaheim, and he's a man of his word. I think he's going to be ready. He is in his mid-30s now, and that is an awfully major injury to recover from, no question. But he is a brilliantly conditioned athlete. I'd say top 3 or 4 conditioned guys on the Penguins. When Sidney Crosby, says, man, I can't keep up with that guy in wind sprints, that tells you what kind of shape he's in. He just worked his butt off, and I saw him skate in July, I think it was, and he looked pretty good then. And just watching him the last week or so, looks like the Dupuis of old to me. I think he'll be ready to start the season now. I fully expect the Penguins to monitor his minutes a little bit. You don't want this guy playing 20 minutes a night right away in October when the playoffs are 6 months away and you're coming off of surgery. That would be stupid, and I think they'll be very careful with him. You'll probably see him more in the 12, 14-minute range to start the season, which I think is perfect for him. But he looks really good, and he is very valuable, as we all know. And one of my first conversations with Mike Johnson, he was just talking about some of the players on the team that he was getting to know. And then Johnson looked at me and he said, I think that team really missed Pascal Dupuis last season. I said, you think? I said, absolutely they did, both on and off the ice. And he looks great.
Dupuis has been such an amazing wild card for the Penguins. I mean, it seems like you bring it up time and time again. When that Marian Hossa deal hit, just how excited everyone was about Marian Hossa, but Dupuis was kind of the throw-in with that whole deal, and now look at where things have gone with him. Another person who is generating a lot of buzz, obviously, because he's the new guy, the new first-round pick for the Penguins this year. Kapanen is kind of coming into camp a little banged up too, isn't he?
Yeah, he had a finger injury, and let's see, this is Tuesday. Yesterday, I believe, he had a final checkup with a doctor, and he should be good to go for camp as far as I know. I don't think it'll be bothering him. In fact, he's been skating in Pittsburgh, just wasn't handling the puck a whole lot. But listen, people are going to love this kid. He's kind of electric to watch on the ice. I mean, he kind of runs on his skates almost. He can absolutely fly. He's got a lot of pizzazz to his game. And he's not cocky or arrogant, but boy, does he have a sense of confidence about him. I have never seen a rookie look more comfortable walking around an NHL locker room than he did during the rookie camp back in